The council chamber stretched wide and tall, built for beings much larger than humans. Ambassador Hye-Jin Lee stood at the speaking platform, her small frame dwarfed by the massive alien delegates surrounding her. She had delivered the same speech dozens of times before. Each time the result was the same. Polite smiles, empty promises. Nothing changed. Earth requests equal representation on the Security Council, she said, her voice steady despite knowing the answer already. We have contributed technology, resources, and labor to the cooperative for 2 centuries. We ask only for the rights promised to all member species. Supreme Chancellor Velthar clicked his mandibles, the sound echoing through the chamber. His insectoid body shifted in the massive chair designed for his species. Ambassador Lee, your request is noted. However, Earth remains a provisional member. Your planet's violent history and dangerous environment make full membership complicated. Hye-Jin felt the familiar burn of anger in her chest. Complicated. It was always complicated. Humans were too violent, too unpredictable, too different. They came from a death world, a planet so hostile that most aliens needed environmental suits just to visit. High gravity, extreme weather, aggressive wildlife, and a history soaked in warfare. The galaxy looked at Earth and saw barbarians. We have been provisional members for 200 years, Hye-Jin said, forcing calm into her words. How much longer must we wait? Trade Minister Quindal, a tall avian creature with brilliant blue feathers, spread his wings slightly. These matters take time, Ambassador. Perhaps another century of observation would be prudent. Another century. Hye-Jin's hands gripped the edge of the platform. She wanted to scream, to demand justice, to make them see humanity as equals. Instead, she bowed her head respectfully and returned to her seat. This was the game. Patience, diplomacy. Hoping that someday, somehow, things would change. But change came faster than anyone expected, and in a form no one wanted. The emergency meeting was called 3 days later. Hye-Jin entered the chamber to find chaos. Delegates shouted in a dozen languages. Holographic displays showed images of destruction on a scale she had never witnessed. Entire star systems consumed, billions dead, fleets destroyed. The Void Swarm had arrived. Chancellor Velthar brought the chamber to order with a sharp screech. Delegates, please. We face an extinction-level threat. The Void Swarm has consumed the outer rim. 7 systems are gone. Our projections show they will reach core worlds within 2 years. The holographic display shifted, showing the enemy. Biomechanical horrors, part living tissue and part machine. They moved in perfect coordination, consuming everything in their path. They assimilated technology, adapted to weapons, and learned from every encounter. Dozens of species had already fallen to them. Our combined fleets cannot stop them, Velthar continued. They adapt too quickly. Our conventional tactics fail. What about the human defense fleet? Someone asked. Hye-Jin looked up, surprised. It was Councillor Thexran, one of the few delegates who had ever shown humans respect. Velthar's mandibles twitched. The humans? They are not a military power. Their planet is a death world, Thexran said. They evolved in constant warfare, against their environment, against their own kind. Perhaps their experience could be valuable. The chamber erupted in argument. Some delegates supported the idea, others found it absurd. Humans were too primitive, too barbaric. But as the debate raged, Hye-Jin saw the truth in their eyes. They were desperate, they were afraid, and they had nowhere else to turn. Velthar called for order again. Ambassador Lee, the Council would hear Earth's position. Hye-Jin stood slowly. This was the moment, the opportunity she had been waiting for. But it came wrapped in blood and death. What exactly are you asking? We need soldiers, Velthar said bluntly. Frontline troops who can fight this enemy. Your people have experience with warfare. We would provide support, logistics, command structure, but we need bodies on the ground, boots in the ships. We need warriors. And in exchange? Hyejin asked, though she already knew. Full membership, council representation, equal rights for all human colonies, everything you have requested. The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to her. Hyejin felt the weight of humanity's future on her shoulders. They were being asked to die for a civilization that had treated them as second-class citizens, to bleed for those who had denied them basic rights, to become the galaxy's shield. I must consult with Earth, she said. There is no time, Velthar replied. We need an answer now. Hyejin looked at the holographic display, at the images of destruction. She thought of Earth, of her home, of humanity's children. If the swarm came, they would not stop. They would consume everything. Earth had no choice. None of them did. If we do this, she said slowly, there will be no going back. You will give us full rights immediately, not after the war, not someday, now. That is not possible, Quindal interjected. There are procedures, protocols. Then find someone else to die for you, Hyejin said sharply. We are not your servants. We are not your tools. If you want humanity's blood, you will pay for it with respect. The chamber erupted again. Velthar raised his arms for silence. He stared at Hyejin for a long moment, his alien features unreadable. Finally, he spoke. Provisional membership will be upgraded immediately upon confirmation of Earth's commitment. Full council representation will follow upon successful deployment of forces. These terms are acceptable? It was not everything. It was not true equality. But it was more than humanity had ever been offered. Hyejin knew that Earth would agree. They had no choice. The swarm threatened everyone. Acceptable, she said. The message reached Earth within hours. The response came within days. 500,000 volunteers, men and women ready to fight, ready to die, ready to prove that humanity deserved its place among the stars. In a military compound on the outskirts of New Seoul, Corporal Tae-Yang Kim received his deployment orders. He was 28 years old, a decorated Marine with 6 years of service. He had trained his entire adult life for combat that had never come. Humanity had been at peace since joining the cooperative. That peace was ending. Lieutenant Ji-Woo Park stood in the Tactical Operations Center studying star charts. She was 32, brilliant, and ruthless when necessary. She had joined the military because Earth needed defenders, even though there was nothing to defend against. Now, finally, her skills would matter. They did not know each other yet. They did not know that their names would become legends, spoken with respect and fear across 1,000 worlds. They only knew that they were being sent to war. The human fleet assembled in orbit, 500,000 souls ready to face an enemy that had destroyed civilizations. They would fight for a galaxy that had rejected them. They would die for species that had scorned them, but they would do it on their terms. As the ships prepared to jump to the contested zone, Tae-Yang stood in the transport bay with thousands of other soldiers. An officer gave them their final briefing. The mission was simple. Hold the line. Stop the swarm. Save the galaxy. Remember, the officer said, we're not doing this for them. We're doing this for us, for Earth, for our families. We're going to show them what humans can do. The soldiers roared their approval. Tae-Yang felt something burning in his chest. Pride, purpose, the knowledge that humanity was about to change forever. The ships jumped into the darkness. Behind them, the galaxy watched and waited. Some hoped the humans would succeed. Others expected them to fail. None of them understood what they had unleashed. The Deathworlders were going to war. The Kaldar system burned. 3 planets had already fallen to the void swarm. The 4th was being evacuated. The 5th, Kaldar Prime, was where humanity would make its stand. Major Sung-Ho Choi stood on the bridge of the UHNS Indomitable, watching the tactical displays with cold calculation. He was 45 years old and had spent his entire career preparing for a war that everyone said would never come. Now it was here, and nothing was as they had been promised. "Sir, the support fleet is maintaining position at the system's edge," reported the communications officer. "They're refusing to advance." Sung-Ho's jaw tightened. The support fleet consisted of ships from 12 different species. They had been promised air support, supply runs, medical evacuation, and reinforcements. Instead, they sat at the edge of the system, far from danger. The equipment they had provided was outdated. The supplies were insufficient. The humans were on their own. "Noted," Sung-Ho said. "Continue preparations." On the surface of Kaldar Prime, Corporal Tae-Yang Kim checked his weapon for the third time. His hands moved automatically, muscle memory from years of training. Around him, thousands of Marines prepared for battle. The atmosphere was tense, but not afraid. These were professionals. They knew what was coming. "Contact in 30 minutes, announced Lieutenant Ji-Woo Park over the company channel. She was in the command bunker, coordinating defensive positions. "All units, final systems check." Tae-Yang glanced at the young soldier next to him. Private Dae-Hyun Yoon was 19 years old, fresh out of training. This was his first deployment. His hands shook slightly as he loaded his rifle. "First time?" Tae-Yang asked. Dae-Hyun nodded. "Is it always like this? The waiting?" "The waiting is the worst part," Tae-Yang said. "Once it starts, you just act. Trust your training." "Did you ever think we would actually see combat?" Dae-Hyun asked. "I mean, humanity has been at peace for so long." Tae-Yang smiled grimly. "Peace is just the time between wars. We were always going to fight eventually. At least now we know what we're fighting for." The swarm arrived exactly on schedule. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel in a cloud of biological ships that defied conventional engineering. Living vessels covered in armor plates, bristling with weapons that were part technology and part evolution. They moved like a school of predatory fish, perfectly coordinated. "All units engage!" Ji-Woo's voice cut through the chaos. The battle began. Human ships opened fire with everything they had: kinetic weapons, missiles, energy beams. The swarm ships took damage but kept coming. They adapted quickly, their armor shifting to deflect attacks. When human ships destroyed one, 3 more took its place. On the ground, the swarm landed. Creatures that were neither fully mechanical nor fully organic poured from drop pods. They had too many legs, too many eyes, weapons growing from their bodies like tumors. They screamed with voices that sounded like metal tearing. Tae-Yang opened fire. His first burst took down a swarm creature, punching through its armor. It fell, twitched, and stopped moving. All around him, Marines fired in disciplined volleys. The noise was deafening. "Hold the line!" a sergeant shouted. "Do not let them through!" The swarm crashed into the human positions like a wave. Hand-to-hand fighting broke out. Tae-Yang saw a creature leap at Dae-Hyun. The young private froze for a split second, then his training kicked in. He brought his rifle up and fired point blank. The creature's head exploded. "Good shot!" Tae-Yang yelled. But the swarm kept coming. For every one they killed, 2 more appeared. The human lines bent but did not break. They fought with a ferocity that surprised even themselves. Earth's high gravity had made them stronger than most species. Their violent evolution had made them efficient killers. They did not panic. They did not retreat. They held. In the medical bay of a forward operating base, Dr. Minji Han worked frantically to save wounded soldiers. She was a xenobiologist, not a combat medic, but there were not enough doctors. Blood covered her hands as she tried to close a massive wound on a Marine's chest. "Stay with me," she said. "You're going to be fine." The Marine coughed blood. "Did we stop them?" "Yes," Minji lied. "We stopped them." The Marine smiled and closed his eyes. His heart monitor went flat. Minji wanted to scream, to cry, to rage against the unfairness of it all. Instead, she moved to the next patient. There was no time for grief. Between surgeries, she studied samples of swarm tissue. What she found horrified her. The swarm was not just a hive mind. It was a collective intelligence that learned from every encounter. Every battle made it smarter. But there was something else. The swarm targeted species with hive minds first. Species that thought collectively fell quickly because the swarm could predict their actions. Humans were different. Humans were individuals. Every soldier thought independently, acted independently, made decisions that the swarm could not predict. It gave them an edge. Minji sent her findings to Jiwoo immediately. In the command bunker, Jiwoo read the report and smiled coldly. She understood instantly. The galaxy had spent centuries trying to make humans more like them, more cooperative, more unified. But humanity's greatest strength was their individuality, their unpredictability, their refusal to think like everyone else. "Change of tactics," Jiwoo announced. "All units, independent action protocols. Squad leaders, you have full autonomy. Fight however you need to fight. Use anything that works." The order went out. Human forces stopped fighting like traditional military units and started fighting like humans. They used improvised weapons, unconventional tactics, psychological warfare. They played music to confuse the swarm's coordination. They used chemical irritants that did not harm them but disrupted swarm sensors. They set traps, ambushes, and false retreats. Tae Yang led his squad in a raid on a swarm nest. They moved through the ruins of a city, using rubble for cover. When they found the nest, they did not call for artillery. They went in with flamethrowers and explosives, clearing it room by room. It was brutal, ugly work. But it was effective. By the end of the first week, the humans had lost 40% of their forces, 4,000 dead, 10,000 wounded. It was a staggering number, but they had held the line. They had stopped the swarm's advance. Major Sung-ho stood among the wounded, the dying, and the dead. He felt anger burning in his chest. The support fleet had done nothing. They had watched from safety while humans bled. The supplies they promised never came. The reinforcements never arrived. The medical ships stayed at the edge of the system. "They sent us here to die," said Commander Bo-Ra Song, a starship captain whose vessel had been badly damaged. She was 34, brilliant and furious. "They never expected us to win." "Then we will disappoint them," Sung-ho said. Word of the human victory spread through the cooperative. The species that had been monitoring from a safe distance were stunned. Humans had faced the swarm and survived. More than survived. They had won. But it was not celebration that filled the galaxy. It was fear, because the recordings showed what humans had done. The ferocity, the violence, the absolute refusal to surrender. The aliens watched humans fight and saw something that terrified them. They saw what happened when you forced a Deathworld species into a corner. The swarm had learned to fear humanity. So had everyone else. Tae Yang sat among the ruins cleaning his weapon. His hands were steady despite the exhaustion. Dae-hyun sat beside him, no longer the frightened boy who had arrived a week ago. The young private's eyes had changed. He had killed. He had seen friends die. He had become a soldier. "We won," Dae-hyun said quietly. "We survived," Tae Yang corrected. "The war is just beginning." Above them, the human fleet regrouped. They had proved themselves. They had shown they could fight. But as Major Sung-ho looked at the casualty reports, he knew the truth. The galaxy had not sent them here to win. They had sent them here to buy time. Humanity was expendable. That was a mistake. 6 months had passed since the first battle at Kaldar Prime. Humanity had fought in 12 major engagements across the contested zone. They had won every single one. The casualty rates were horrific. Nearly half of the original 500,000 volunteers were dead or permanently injured. But the line held. The swarm's advance had stopped. The galaxy was not grateful. They were afraid. Corporal Tae-Yang Kim, now promoted to sergeant, led his squad through the wreckage of a swarm Nexus ship. These massive vessels served as command centers for entire swarm fleets. Taking them was nearly impossible. Nearly. "Clear left," reported one of his Marines. "Clear right," confirmed another. They moved through corridors made of living tissue and metal alloy. The walls pulsed with a sick rhythm. The air smelled like copper and decay. This was the third Nexus ship Tai Yang's unit had captured. Each one revealed more about the enemy. In the central chamber they found it, a massive biological computer, half brain and half machine. Dr. Min Ji-han was with them, scanning everything with her instruments. "Incredible," she whispered. "This is their collective memory. Every battle, every encounter, every species they have faced. It is all here." "Can you access it?" Tae-Yang asked. Minji worked quickly, connecting her equipment to the organic network. Data flooded her screens, images, tactical assessments, biological profiles. Then she stopped, her face going pale. "What is it?" Tae-Yang asked. "They fear us," Minji said quietly. "The swarm has a priority threat assessment. Humans are ranked above every other species in the cooperative. They have designated us as the primary danger." Tae-Yang felt a cold satisfaction. "Good." "You do not understand," Minji said, turning to face him. "They fear us more than death. Their entire strategy has shifted. They are avoiding human forces, targeting other species first. We have not just stopped them. We have become the thing they run from." The recordings from the Nexus ship made their way back to the Cooperative Council. Ambassador Hai-Jin Lee watched the data with mixed feelings. Humanity had proven itself. They had done what no other species could, but the cost was written in blood. She entered the council chamber for what should have been a triumphant meeting. Instead, she found hostility. "The human forces are too aggressive," complained Trade Minister Quindall. "Their tactics are barbaric. They show no mercy." "They show the swarm exactly what it deserves," Hye-Jin replied coldly. "You asked for warriors. This is what warriors do." "We asked for soldiers, not monsters," Quindall said. The chamber erupted in argument. Hye-Jin listened to them debate humanity's methods, while human bodies piled up in morgues across the war zone. They criticized tactics while sitting safely in their comfortable seats. They questioned humanity's approach while contributing nothing. Supreme Chancellor Velthar raised his arms for silence. "Ambassador Lee, the Council recognizes humanity's contributions. However, there are concerns about the level of violence being employed." "Concerns?" Hye-Jin's voice was ice. "We have lost 250,000 people fighting your war. We have bled for 6 months while your species watch from safety. And now you have concerns about our methods?" "The promised resources will arrive soon," Velthar said quickly. "There have been delays in logistics." "There have been delays for 6 months," Hye-Jin said. "Where are the supplies? Where are the reinforcements? Where is the support you promised?" No one answered. Lieutenant Ji-Woo Park stood in the Tactical Operations Center aboard the UHNS Indomitable, studying intelligence reports. Something was wrong. Human supply convoys kept getting ambushed. The swarm always knew exactly where to strike. The timing was too perfect. She brought her concerns to Major Sung-Ho Choi. "Someone is feeding them information," Ji-Woo said bluntly. "The swarm is not guessing. They know our routes, our schedules, our weak points." "You think there is a spy?" Sung-Ho asked. "I think there is a traitor," Ji-Woo corrected. "Someone in the cooperative is working with the swarm." They set a trap. A fake supply convoy with false information leaked through official channels. Then they waited. Sure enough, the swarm attacked exactly where predicted, but this time, human ships were ready. They captured several swarm communication nodes and brought them to Dr. Minji Han. Minji worked for days decoding the alien signals. What she found made her blood run cold. Communication logs between the swarm and someone in the cooperative, coordinates of human positions, supply routes, tactical weaknesses, all sold in exchange for one thing. The swarm would avoid certain worlds. Trade Minister Quindal had betrayed them. His home world was on the list of planets the swarm had mysteriously bypassed. While other species burned, his people were safe. He had bought their survival with human lives. Ji Woo brought the evidence to Major Sung Ho. The Major stared at the data for a long time, saying nothing. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but deadly. "Call a meeting. All human commanders. It is time we made a decision." 300 officers gathered aboard the Indomitable. Sung Ho presented the evidence. The room fell silent as they absorbed what it meant. They were fighting for people who had sent them to die, people who were actively helping the enemy. "We have a choice," Sung Ho said. "We can abandon this war. Let the galaxy burn. Go home to Earth and let them face the consequences of their betrayal." The room erupted in angry agreement. These were men and women who had lost friends, comrades, and in some cases, entire units. They had every right to walk away. Or, Sung Ho continued, his voice cutting through the noise, "We finish this war. Not for them. For us. We prove that humanity keeps its word, even when others do not. We show the galaxy what it means to make an enemy of Earth." "And then?" asked Captain Bo-Ra Song. "And then," Sung Ho said with a cold smile, "we make sure they never forget the price of betraying us." The vote was unanimous. Humanity would finish the war. But the terms had changed. Engineer Subin Oh, a quiet woman of 26 who specialized in systems integration, was given a special assignment. Working with Sergeant Young-Sik Kwan, a demolitions expert, they began installing devices throughout key cooperative infrastructure, communication hubs, trade stations, council facilities, small undetectable packages that could be activated remotely. Insurance, Sung Ho called it. Ji Woo coordinated the largest offensive humanity had yet attempted. They called it the Death World Doctrine. Every brutal tactic humanity had ever developed. Every lesson learned from Earth's bloody history. Chemical weapons, biological warfare, scorched earth policies, things the cooperative considered war crimes, things humans had promised never to use again, promises made to people who had betrayed them. Tae Yang's unit was assigned to a swarm-breeding world, a planet where the enemy created new warriors. The objective was simple: total elimination, no survivors, no mercy. They deployed nerve agents into the atmosphere. They bombed breeding pits with incendiaries. They went in with flamethrowers and cleared every structure. Dae Hyun, the young private who had been so frightened 6 months ago, burned a nest without hesitation. His face was blank, emotionless. The war had changed him. It had changed all of them. When the mission was complete, the planet was dead. Sterile. Nothing would ever live there again. News of the operation spread through the cooperative. Horror and fear mixed with grudging respect. The swarm began avoiding human forces entirely, focusing on easier targets. Humanity had become too dangerous to fight. On Earth, intelligence officer Narration continued digging into the conspiracy. She was 31, brilliant, and relentless. What she found went deeper than anyone suspected. 6 species on the council had known about the plan to sacrifice humanity. They had all agreed it was acceptable losses. Chancellor Velthar himself had approved it. Nari sent the evidence to Ambassador Hyejin Lee. The ambassador stared at her screen, reading the documents over and over. Everything they had suspected was true. Humanity was always meant to be expendable. "Release it," Ye Jin said. "Send it to every species in the cooperative. Let them all see the truth." The revelation broke the cooperative. Dozens of member species felt betrayed alongside humanity. Some had children fighting in the war. Others had made sacrifices thinking they were united. The conspiracy shattered alliances that had stood for centuries. In the chaos, General Hyojin Bai led a strike team to capture Trade Minister Quindal. They found him trying to flee to his homeworld. He begged for mercy. He claimed he was only protecting his people. "We were protecting everyone," Hyojin said. "You were protecting yourself." Quindal was tried by military tribunal, found guilty of treason, executed by firing squad. The Cooperative Council protested. Human forces ignored them. The message was clear: betray us, and there are consequences. Tai Yang sat in his quarters cleaning his weapons. He was exhausted. They all were. But the war was not over. The swarm was still out there. And now the galaxy knew that humanity was no longer seeking acceptance. They were demanding respect. "Do you think this will ever end?" Dae-hyun asked. The young soldier sat across from him, older than his years. "Wars always end," Tae-yang said. "What comes after is the question. What do you think comes after?" Tai-yang looked at his reflection in the polished metal of his rifle. He barely recognized himself. None of them were the same people who had left Earth 6 months ago. "I think," he said slowly, "they will fear us. And maybe that is enough." The war entered its 10th month. Humanity no longer fought for acceptance or recognition. They fought with cold, calculated fury. The Deathworld doctrine had transformed them from soldiers into something the galaxy had never seen before. Relentless, unstoppable, terrifying. Sergeant Tae-yang Kim stood at the edge of a cliff overlooking a swarm hive complex. His armor was scarred from countless battles. His face was harder now, carved by months of violence. Behind him, 50 Marines waited for the signal. This was a zero-survivor mission, complete elimination. "Remember," he said over the squad channel, "we show them exactly what happens when you make Deathworlders angry." They went in fast. Chemical weapons first, clearing the atmosphere of the valley. Then artillery, pounding the hive structures until the ground shook. Finally, ground forces with flamethrowers, grenades, and pure rage. The swarm tried to defend. They tried to adapt. But there was no adapting to human fury. Private Dae-hyun Yoon, now a corporal, led a demolitions team into the breeding chambers. They placed charges with mechanical efficiency. When the explosives detonated, the entire complex collapsed into itself. Millions of swarm larvae died in seconds. "Target eliminated," Tae-yang reported. "No survivors." "Confirmed," replied Lieutenant Ji-woo Park from orbit. "Move to extraction point." But there would be no extraction, not yet, because surveillance had spotted another hive complex 20 kilometers away. They marched through the night and hit it at dawn, then another and another. For 3 days, they systematically destroyed every swarm presence on the planet. When they finally returned to their ships, they were covered in ash and blood. But the mission was complete. The planet was clear. The swarm had lost a major stronghold. On Earth, Admiral Jae-hwan Lim reviewed the latest casualty reports with growing anger. He was 52. A career officer who had spent decades preparing Earth's defenses. Now he watched his people die for aliens who had betrayed them. 300,000 dead, he said to his staff. Out of 500,000 volunteers, 60% casualties. "Sir, the Cooperative Council is requesting additional forces," said an aide. "They can request all they want," Jae-hwan said coldly. "We are not sending more people to die for them." "But the war—" "The war is nearly over," Jae-hwan interrupted. "The swarm is breaking. Another few months and they will collapse completely. Our people have done what was asked. More than what was asked. No more. But someone else was making discoveries that would change everything. Intelligence officer Narration had spent months investigating the conspiracy. What started with Trade Minister Quindal led to others. She found evidence of meetings, secret communications, and agreements made before humanity ever joined the war. The conspiracy went to the top. Chancellor Velthar had not just approved the plan to sacrifice humanity, he had suggested it. Nari compiled everything into a single report. Financial transactions showing bribes, communication logs proving coordination, video recordings of private meetings where council members discussed humanity like a problem to be solved. They had never intended to honor the agreement. They were going to let humans die, then claim they tried their best. She sent the report to Admiral J. Huan, then to Ambassador Hae-Jin Lee, then to every major news network in the cooperative. Within hours, the galaxy knew the full truth. The reaction was immediate and violent. The cooperative fractured. Species that had been allies for centuries turned on each other. Protests erupted on council worlds. Some species demanded accountability. Others tried to defend their leadership. The unity that had held the galaxy together for millennia shattered in days. On the council homeworld, Ambassador Hae-Jin Lee confronted Chancellor Velthar directly. The chamber was nearly empty. Most delegates had fled or gone into hiding. Only the essential staff remained. "You planned this from the beginning," Hae-Jin said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned. "You never intended to give us equality. You just needed bodies to throw at the swarm." Velthar's mandibles clicked nervously. "Ambassador, you must understand. The calculations showed—" "The calculations?" Hae-Jin interrupted. 300,000 human beings are dead because of your calculations. Children who will never grow up. Parents who will never see their families again. All because you decided we were expendable. Every species makes sacrifices in war, Velthar said defensively. But only one species was lied to about why they were sacrificing, Hae-Jin replied. Only one species was betrayed by those they were protecting. The door to the chamber opened. Admiral Jae-Hwan Lim entered, flanked by human marines. Velthar backed away nervously. "Ambassador Lee," Jae-Hwan said formally, "I have orders from Earth. All human forces are to cease operations and return home immediately." "You are abandoning the war?" Velthar asked, his voice rising in panic. "We are abandoning you," Jae-Hwan corrected. "The swarm is no longer our problem. You wanted to use us and discard us. Consider yourselves discarded. But you cannot." Velthar's composure broke completely. "The swarm will overrun everything. Billions will die." "That is unfortunate," Hae-Jin said without emotion. "Perhaps you should have thought of that before betraying us." "I will give you anything," Velthar begged. "Full council membership, territory, resources. Name your price." Admiral Jae-Hwan smiled coldly. "Counselor Kyung-Soo-An is preparing a list of terms. You will meet every single one, or we walk away and you face the swarm alone." In the weeks that followed, Counselor Kyung-Soo-An, a former general turned diplomat, delivered humanity's demands. Full membership with 4 council seats, not 1. War reparations equivalent to 3% of the cooperative's annual production for the next 50 years. Complete military autonomy for human forces. The right to maintain independent fleets and weapons systems. No restrictions on human expansion or colonization. And one more thing. Chancellor Velthar would step down immediately. "These terms are outrageous," protested one of the remaining council members. "These terms are generous," Kyung-Soo replied calmly. "We could demand much more. We could demand everything. You put a price on human lives. Now we are putting a price on our continued service. Pay it, or face extinction." Some species threatened military action. Admiral Jae-Hwan had prepared for that. He invited several alien military leaders to observe a demonstration. Commander Yoon-ji Ryu, a special operations leader of 36 with a reputation for impossible missions, led a strike team in a simulation. They infiltrated a heavily defended station in 12 minutes, eliminated all targets in 7, and extracted without a single casualty in 4. The entire operation took 23 minutes. The alien observers were terrified. "This was a simulation," Admiral J. Huan said. "Imagine what we could do to real targets." Then Subin O activated one of her insurance devices. A communication hub on a major trade world went dark. No damage, no casualties. It simply stopped working. The message was clear. Humanity had the power to cripple the cooperative's infrastructure whenever they wanted. "We do not want war with you," Kyung-soo said. "But if you force our hand, you will discover why Earth is called a death world." The Council capitulated. They had no choice. Without humanity, the swarm would consume them. With humanity as an enemy, they would face something worse. But there was one more thing humanity wanted. The war needed to end, completely. Dr. Junwoo Seo, a weapons researcher of 43, had been working on a biological weapon, something that would target the swarm specifically. It took him 8 months to perfect. The result was a retrovirus that attacked swarm neural tissue while leaving other organic matter intact. Commander Yoonji Ryu volunteered to deliver it. Her mission was considered suicide. She would have to penetrate the swarm's primary nexus, the central intelligence that controlled the entire species. 50 soldiers volunteered to go with her. Tae Yang was among them. "You do not have to do this," Lieutenant Ji Woo Park told him. "You have done enough." "It needs to end," Tae Yang said simply. "No more half measures. We finish this." The mission launched from human space. They used a captured swarm vessel, modified with human systems. They flew directly into swarm territory, deeper than any ship had ever gone. For 5 days, they navigated through enemy fleets, pretending to be another swarm ship. When they reached the Nexus, a massive biological construct the size of a moon, they knew there was no turning back. They landed on the surface and began the infiltration. The swarm realized the deception within minutes. Thousands of warriors converged on their position. Yoonji's team fought their way to the core. They lost soldiers with every meter. 38 of the 50 died getting the weapon to its deployment point. Tai Yang took a hit that should have killed him, but sheer stubbornness kept him moving. "Deploy it!" Yoonji screamed over the chaos. Junwoo activated the device. The retrovirus spread through the nexus at an exponential rate. Within seconds, it was in the swarm's entire network. Within minutes, it reached every corner of swarm space. The effect was catastrophic. Swarm creatures across 100 star systems began to die. Their neural systems shut down. Their ships went dead in space. Their hive minds collapsed into biological static. In 72 hours, 80% of the swarm was gone. Of the 50 soldiers who went on the mission, 7 made it back. Tae Yang was one of them. Barely alive, but alive. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as humanity ended a threat that had seemed unstoppable. They had not just won, they had annihilated the enemy so completely that future generations would barely remember the swarm existed. The swarm was dying, across 100 star systems. The retrovirus did its work. Biological ships drifted dead in space. Hive minds collapsed into silence. Breeding worlds became graveyards. What had been an extinction-level threat was now just biomass floating in the void. Humanity did not celebrate. They waited. Counselor Kyung-soo An stood before what remained of the Galactic Council. Many seats were empty. Some species had withdrawn entirely. Others had been consumed by internal conflicts following the revelation of the conspiracy. The unity that had defined the cooperative for thousands of years was gone. "Humanity has fulfilled its obligation," Kyung-soo said, his voice echoing in the chamber. "We have fought your war, bled for your survival. Lost 300,000 of our people. The swarm is broken. Our part is done." "You still possess the cure," said Counselor Raxmill. "A reptilian species who had remained neutral during the crisis. The swarm is dying, but pockets remain. If you share the weapon, we can finish them completely." "And why would we do that?" Kyung-Soo asked calmly. The chamber fell silent. The answer was obvious to everyone. Humanity was not obligated to share anything. They had been betrayed, used, and nearly destroyed. They owed the cooperative nothing. "Because it is the right thing to do," Raxmill said quietly. Kyung-Soo smiled without warmth. The right thing. An interesting concept coming from a body that planned to sacrifice us from the beginning. "Chancellor Velthar has resigned," Raxmill said. "Those responsible for the conspiracy are being held accountable. We are trying to rebuild trust." "Trust," Lieutenant Ji-Woo Park, now promoted to commander, spoke from her position behind Kyung-Soo. 300,000 humans died because you broke our trust. You do not rebuild that. You earn it over generations." "Then what do you want?" asked another counselor desperately. Kyung-Soo placed a data chip on the podium. "Our terms were delivered weeks ago. Full membership, 4 council seats, war reparations, military autonomy. Accept them all immediately, or we keep the weapon and you deal with the remaining swarm yourselves." The council erupted in argument. Some species wanted to accept. They had no choice. Others still believed they could pressure humanity into compliance. They were fools. Admiral Jae-Hwan Lim sent a message from Earth that made everything clear. "All human forces have been recalled to defensive positions around Earth space. We are no longer participating in cooperative military operations. If you have problems with the remaining swarm, solve them yourselves. If you threaten humanity in any way, you will discover that we are far more dangerous than the swarm ever was." To prove the point, Sergeant Young-Sik Kwan activated another insurance device. A trade station went offline, then another, then a communications relay. Within hours, 3 major economic hubs were crippled. No damage, no casualties, they just stopped working. "These systems will be restored when our terms are accepted," Kyung-Soo said. "Choose quickly, the swarm is still out there." The council had no choice. They voted. The terms were accepted. Humanity would receive everything they demanded, but the victory felt hollow to those who had fought for it. Commander Yoonji Ryu sat in a medical bay, recovering from wounds that should have killed her. Of the 7 survivors from the Nexus mission, 3 were still in critical condition. She thought about the 43 who had not come back. Good soldiers, good people, dead because the galaxy needed heroes. Tae Yang visited her. His own injuries were severe, but he refused to stay in bed. His body was covered in scars now, each one a story of survival. "They accepted the terms," he said. "Good," Yoonji replied. "Was it worth it?" Tai Yang did not answer immediately. He thought about Dae-hyun, who had grown from a scared boy into a hardened soldier. About the Marines he had served with, many now dead. About Dr. Min-ji-han, who had saved hundreds of lives while watching thousands die. About all the humans who would never go home. "Ask me in 50 years, he finally said. On Earth, former Ambassador Hye-Jin Lee announced her retirement. She had secured humanity's place in the galaxy, but the cost had broken something inside her. She would spend her remaining years writing a memoir. The title came to her immediately. The debt was paid in blood. "We wanted equality," she wrote in the first chapter. "We wanted respect. We wanted to be seen as partners, not servants. Instead, we were seen as tools, weapons to be used and discarded. So we became weapons. We became exactly what they feared. And when the fear became respect, we realized we had lost something essential: our innocence, our idealism, our belief that the galaxy was worth saving." Intelligence officer Narration did not retire. She built a network that monitored every species in the cooperative. Every communication, every transaction, every secret. No conspiracy against humanity would ever succeed again. She made sure of it. They betrayed us once, she told her team. It will never happen again. Her network became legendary. Some called it humanity's shield. Others called it humanity's sword. Nari called it insurance, because trust was a luxury Earth could no longer afford. Major Sung Ho Choi, now promoted to general, addressed the surviving human forces before they returned to Earth. 200,000 soldiers, less than half of those who had departed. They gathered in the hangar bays of their ships, exhausted and hollow-eyed. "You were told this war would earn us respect," Sung Ho said. "You were told we would become equals. That was a lie. We earned fear. We earned compliance. We earned the right to never be dismissed again. But respect? That is something they may never give us." He paused, looking at the faces of those who had survived. Young and old, veterans and recruits, all changed by what they had seen and done. But here is the truth. It does not matter what they think of us anymore. What matters is what we think of ourselves. We are the humans who held the line when everyone else ran. We are the Deathworlders who saved a galaxy that tried to destroy us. We are the ones who came back when no one expected us to survive. Remember that. Remember who you are. Remember what you did, and never, ever let them forget what it cost. The soldiers did not cheer. They simply stood at attention, silent and grim. They had earned the right to peace, but they would never be at peace again. Dr. Junwoo Seo destroyed all records of the bioweapon after sharing it with the cooperative. He made sure no one could recreate it. The galaxy did not need more weapons. It needed time to heal. But he kept one sample, hidden, secure, just in case. "I hope we never need it," he told his assistant. But hope is not a strategy. Captain Bo Ra Song, who had survived her ship's destruction and spent 17 days in an escape pod, was given command of humanity's first dreadnought. The UHNS Retribution was the most powerful warship ever built by human hands. It was armed with weapons that made other species nervous. It was crewed by veterans who had fought the swarm and won. "This ship is not for conquest," Admiral Jae-hwan told her at the commissioning ceremony. "It is a promise, a reminder. If anyone threatens Earth, if anyone forgets what humanity is capable of, they will see this ship, and they will remember." Bo-Ra understood. The war was over, but the vigilance would never end. Corporal Dae-hyun-yoon, decorated for valor, struggled with civilian life. The nightmares came every night. The faces of those he had killed, the friends he had lost, the things he had done in humanity's name. A therapist told him it was normal, that many soldiers felt this way. "We fought for the right reasons," Dae-hyun said during one session. "Did we?" the therapist asked gently. Dae-hyun did not have an answer. Across human space, memorials were built, names carved into stone. 300,000 men and women who had gone to war and never returned. Families visited, children who would never know their parents, partners who would grow old alone. The cost of equality, measured in lives. At one memorial, Tae-yang placed flowers and stood in silence. He thought about the faces he would never forget, the voices that would haunt him forever, the price they had all paid for a seat at a table that did not want them. "Was it worth it?" someone asked beside him. Tae-yang turned. It was Ji-woo, now promoted to commander of tactical operations. She looked as tired as he felt. "We are free now," Tae-yang said. "We are equals. We have power. We have respect." "And it only cost us our souls," Ji-woo replied. They stood together in silence, two soldiers who had seen too much and survived too much. The war was over, but its scars would never heal. The galaxy moved on, trade resumed, alliances reformed. The cooperative began to rebuild. But it was different now. Humanity sat on the council, not as supplicants but as equals. 4 human representatives who voted with Earth's interests first and the galaxy's second. Other species watched them nervously. The humans who had saved civilization. The Deathworlders who had proven they were more dangerous than any external threat. The warriors who had paid in blood for their seat at the table. Some whispered that humanity had been right to demand what they did. Others whispered that they had gone too far, that they had become the very thing they fought against, that saving the galaxy by becoming monsters was not salvation at all. He-Jin finished her memoir with a simple question. We paid the debt in blood, but what did we buy? Equality, respect, or just fear? The galaxy did not have an answer. Neither did humanity. What they had was an uneasy peace, a new order built on the ashes of trust, a civilization that had learned a terrible lesson: never underestimate a Deathworld species. Never betray those who fight for you, and never, ever force humans to choose between dignity and survival, because they would choose both, and the cost would be paid in blood.